College in collaboration with Department of Political Science under the aegis of IQAC and supported by Indian Council of Philosophical Research. The theme for this technical session is Gandhi and New Social Movements. Without much ado, let me take this opportunity to introduce our session chair, Professor Sushila Ramaswamy. Ma'am is a senior faculty of political science at Jesus and Mary College. She is a recipient of the Fulbright postdoctoral grant and UGC Research Award. She was a visiting fellow at the National University of Singapore. To her credit, she has her PhD from University of Delhi on Rawls and Aesthetics. Ma'am specializes in political theory and comparative politics. She has authored several books such as Women in Political Thought and Political Theory, Ideas and Concepts, A History of Political Thought, Plato to Marx, History of Social Thought from Predecessor to the Present, Democracy in Theory and Practice, and Theoretical Foundations of Comparative Politics. We welcome you, ma'am. Now I would like our student volunteer Vanshika to felicitate ma'am with a token of respect and gratitude. Thank you, Vanshika. We also have with us Mr. Harish Dhawan as the discussant for the session. Mr. Dhawan has teaching experience of more than 30 years in Department of Economics. He is associated with a number of people's movements from his early days, ranging from the environmental organization in Delhi to the forest protection and forest rights movement in the present-day Uttarakhand, Chipko movement, anti-liquor movement also in Uttarakhand, as well as the movement for creation of Uttarakhand state. His longest association has been with civil liberty and democratic rights movement spanning over 4 decades. We welcome you, sir. Now I would like to request Komal to kindly felicitate sir with token of respect. Thank you, Sakshi. Thank you, Komal. We're fine. All right. So, let me take this opportunity to welcome our first speaker for the day, Dr. Dhananjay Rai. He is visiting fellow at the Center for the Study of Developing Societies, Delhi, and faculty at the Center for Gandhian Thought and Peace Studies, Central University of Gujarat, Gandhinagar, India. His select books include Debating Swaraj, Phone Swaraj, Contested Representations, Politics, Essays in Tribute to Ranveer Singh, Nehru and Modernity, Democracy on the Move, Reflections on Movements, Promises and Contradictions, and Contemporary Indian Political Theory, a Critical Analysis. His research articles and reviews have been published in Economic and Political Weekly, Seminar, Social Change, Social Scientist, Think India Quarterly, Book Review, the Indian Journal of Public Administration, Contemporary Education Dialogue, Alochana and Samved. We welcome you wholeheartedly, sir. Now I would like to request Sakshi to kindly felicitate sir with a token of appreciation. Thank you, Sakshi. Our second speaker for the day is Ms. Priya Sharma, who has joined us through online mode. She is a research scholar, CPS, SSS, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. We wholeheartedly welcome you, ma'am. Thank you for taking out your special time and being with us. I would now like to humbly hand over the session to Professor Ramaswamy, our session chair for the day, for further proceedings, ma'am. Thank you.
Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to chair the session. Good break time. Now, Satish, tell me how much time do we have? Because we're supposed to start at 10 o'clock and we are 45 minutes late. So where do we finish? So we finish by 11:30? Okay. So we have one, three.
Three.
Okay.
You have Rita.
So you have two speakers, Dr. Dhananjay and Ms. Pirasha.
No, but Rita Pyari.
So I think she will speaking in this particular session. I think she has a session.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, right.
So I guess 10 minutes will be sufficient.
This
Best time slots, right? So 10 minutes we can put each speaker. So that will then give 5 minutes to discuss it. And maybe 3 minutes to the chair. Is that fine? Okay. So
Am I audible?
yes.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak, and I'm thanking to Satish for asking me to speak on Gandhi Forum, discussing Rajniti and localities. Briefly, there is a discussion on Swaraj in Gandhi and but the process of making Swaraj has not been discussed widely, and briefly, what I have 9 minutes or 10 minutes, so I will try to summarize the argument. In place of explaining the argument, I will try to summarize my argument. So making Swaraj is an important part, and making Swaraj, I would suggest that it is an important component in Gandhi's political community, and Gandhi tries to locate his Swaraj. When we talk about Swaraj, making of Swaraj has not been realized properly. So I think there are 3 stages of making of Swaraj in Gandhi. One is narration of human condition, and second is satyagraha, and third is apotheosis of political community. So narration of human condition, satyagraha, and apotheosis of human community or political community are very, very important and crucial component in theorizing Gandhi's Swaraj. What is happening that when we are trying to understand Swaraj and lots of books on Swaraj, the missing component is satyagraha. And for this, I would like to highlight that Gandhi was a very particular characterization of Swaraj if you don't focus on satyagraha. Let's briefly discuss a book called Satyagraha in South Africa, and it has certain features. And I'm not going to elaborate those features. Those features are from 25th May 1893 till 18 July 1914. This is the time period in which Gandhi was trying to develop Satyagraha. Here, first point of Satyagraha was individual events, discrimination, resistance, and related development. Second, and in this period, Gandhi was trying to read Tolstoy, whose Kingdom of God is Within You, and he also read John Ruskin's Unto This Last in 1904. Then we see the birth of Satyagraha in this period, and which we can call epistemic diversity in Gandhi Satyagraha. And then third phase of Satyagraha, when we locate in South Africa, Gandhi is proposing interdependence, Hindu-Muslim unity, close association with Christianity, engaging diverse groups from India. Fourth phase of Satyagraha in South Africa was interdependent space, Phoenix settlement and Tolstoy farm. And fifth was, he was trying to develop organization against injustice, like foundation of Natal Indian Congress or Indian Ambulance Corps or publication of Indian Opinion. Sixth stage is political action, when he was trying to develop Satyagraha Empire Theatre, and also burning the registration certificate. And then he was inviting the meaning of Satyagraha through Madan Lal Gandhi and the publication of Swaraj in 1909 and 10. The idea of political obligation through proposing the concept of interdependence, where Satyagraha was important. So his idea of Satyagraha was interdependence against the very rigid formation of the modern Western state, that is the political obligation. So we need Satyagraha to theorize political community. And however, in modern time, of course, Michael Walzer and Rawls and Joseph Rawls do see little possibility of civil disobedience. Gandhi would say that civil disobedience is inherent right of citizen. Walzer would say that the heroic encounter between sovereign individual and sovereign state, if it ever took place, would be terrifyingly unequal. If disobedience dependent upon a conscience really private, it might always be justified and never occur. So this is the condition in which civil disobedience has not been given significant space. So So Gandhi proposes satyagraha as an important part of our political community in form of interdependence against the political obligation. And this is a very important if we bring back satyagraha in political community because it changes the nature of moralism. At the outset, moralism of Gandhi appears to be conservative. However, transcendence begins with the onset of satyagraha as it proceeds. This changes subjectivity radically. Once the process of satyagraha starts, there is no control over it. There is a control of initiation, but not afterwards. And then at the three level, satyagraha becomes very important, revolutionizing everydayness, right-bearing collective, and transcendence. Now, if we come back to the Rajniti and Lokniti debate, which was proposed by Vinoba Bhave and JP later on, I think this is an important debate to understand the new social movements. What I am trying to suggest that Vinoba's postulation was self-discipline, self-control, self-sufficiency, love, gentle behavior, non-acquisition, decision-making by everyday consent, and absence of the desire to rule. Often the debate in new social movement or social movement backed by Gandhian theories started distancing the concept of satyagraha even in a social movement. So political obligation, Rajniti is problematic in this theorization, but the satyagraha was not considered very important in a sevenfold understanding of Lokniti as proposed by Vinoba Bhave. Briefly, and this is my concluding remarks, that if we have Lokniti discourse, and Lokniti discourse actually bypasses political obligation and satyagraha both, which was not case in the writings of Gandhi. And if we have a new social movement, we have some inspiration, and many people have theorized like Ingle Hart, Turin, Laclau, Offey, and Wallerstein, and many Foucault, Habermas, and Guattari in Indian context there are many. What is the implication when we don't have satyagraha in new social movement? Then there are possibly 5 outcomes. One is there is no political action, and we have movement without political action because satyagraha component is missing, and even in Lokniti, moralism is a very important, but satyagraha component is completely missing. Second is clubbing within the civil society, and this is the distinct feature of the new social movement, that they are easily clubbed within the civil society. Once you are clubbed within the civil society, then the possibility of the satyagraha is over because you don't act as a satyagrahi. Third is the pressure group. And what is happening in new social movement if we are omitting political obligation, problematic of political obligation, and the required importance of satyagraha, that thinking self and omitting other become a very natural phenomena. And fifth, there is immense scope to develop new social movement as an anti-signifier, but this anti-signifier itself is not sufficient for the transformation of the structural injustices we face every day in form of capital, caste, class, gender, and in many forms. Thank you.
Here, because of the paucity of time. So there are 3 main. So there are 3 main points that the paper focuses on. The first is that it reflects upon how a Gandhian political could be fished in so as to make substantive and radical shifts through non-violence. The paper argues that Gandhi's idea of political can be understood as an embedded. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes.
Am I audible? Actually, Satish sir is calling me continuously. He said that you are.
Well, please turn on your camera, please. Please turn on your camera.
Actually, then, yeah. So the thing is that there is the connection is very low. That's why I'm not able to turn on my camera. I'm trying to turn on my camera. It is saying that the video is not there because of the low connection. That's why.
It's okay now. It's okay.
I'm very sorry about that. Now, first it reflects upon how a Gandhian political could be fished in so as to make substantive and radical shifts through non-violence. The paper argues that Gandhi's idea of political can be understood as an embedded political which seeks to rope in together economic, social, political and spiritual realm. But such an idea of political is still incipient in the present social movements that tend to differentiate among various spheres and find it better to have a substantive presence in the social arena. The second point is that the paper further observes that this kind of a limited approach can be sustained only temporarily as contemporary issues are extremely complex and interrelated. Therefore, in order to achieve meaningful changes, it is indispensable to go beyond the boundaries, as Gandhi had envisioned. The third point is that it highlights that even though movements like Ekta Parishad walk on Gandhian path, still it subtly adds or subtracts elements from the framework of Gandhian ethics. Hence, a fresh lens is required to understand the Gandhianness of the movement like Ekta Parishad today. The paper takes care of this point and makes an attempt to reread Gandhi through the lens of Ekta Parishad. Keeping in mind the above 3 points, the paper is divided into 3 sections. The first section attempts to present Gandhi's idea of political. The second lays down how Gandhian movements like Ekta Parishad make sense of Gandhi's idea of political. And the third section critically analyzes the Gandhian idea of political. So this is in fact that the paper is all about. Now I will start with Gandhi's idea of political. I will very briefly explain it. As already mentioned, this section elucidates Gandhi's idea of political. It can be said that Gandhi's idea of political was emergentist, experiential and holistic. In addition to this, it is to be noted that his idea of political had 3 foundational values, which were self, truth and ahimsa. Now, such an emergentist, experiential and holistic conception of Gandhi's political that is weaved in a moral as well as social fabric can be encapsulated under the idea of an embedded political. The term embedded political presents a totalized ontology that Gandhi advocated while framing his political philosophy. For Gandhi, the social is closely related to the political as he focused upon cultivating such social values that would transform the human from within, which would further base her or his political role on these values. Hence, it can be said that he wanted a political which is embedded in moral or ethical values embedded in the social. In other words, a society that is imbibed moral or ethical values will form a political system that is made to support and further such values. At this point, it is also to be noted that as the self starts adhering to the moral values and society starts to adopt the path of selflessness, the economic sphere also begins to redefine itself. A redefinition becomes important because the foundation of economic value starts building on the base laid by such moral values which inform the social. Therefore, profit motive gives way to the motivation of doing good for all and selfless service ascends over selfish activities. The above explanation demonstrates that the idea of an embedded political imbibes a dialectical framework of understanding political. Gandhi's political is an embedded political because it takes cognizance of this framework and thus establishes an inextricable link between the social and the political. Gandhi is constantly learning about self, truth and ahimsa during different phases of his life metamorphosized into an idea of an embedded political. Gandhi wanted his political to be expansive and universal. It is due to this reason that the fundamentals of his idea of politics were derived from life's most accessible, pervasive and common resources. For instance, the starting point of preaching towards this idea of political was self. He argued that the major goal of every human activity is guided by the search for truth, and as nobody knows the ultimate truth, everybody is bound to be having fragments of truth. In order to keep continuing the search and to reach as far as possible in this search, everybody needs to respect each other, as without their support, the related truth would remain in isolation. It is by understanding others' related truth that I can move forward in my endeavor to know my truth better. This means following the path of ahimsa indispensable. Ahimsa again is a very intrinsic concept of human life and is a core principle of Gandhi's idea of politics. So, the idea of embedded political espoused by Gandhi is a legacy that the contemporary social movements respect and seek to adopt while making their way through non-violence. In relation to this point, the pertinent question which the paper attempts to answer is answer in the next section is that how the non-violent movements like Ekta Parishad adopt Gandhi's understanding of political while adapting to the changed political context. I'll skip some of the part and I'll come down to the explanation of how Ekta Parishad is understanding political. Now, Gandhian movements like Ekta Parishad follow a kind of political that seems to be in the bounds of constitutional framework of the country, but also aims to make a space of substantive dissent so as to address injustices done to the downtrodden in independent India. It can be said that a sort of political non-violence has been taken as the foundation of such dissent. This kind of non-violence has to do with achieving political goals, not by directly participating in all these political processes. One example being, they do not want to fight elections as political parties, but by mobilizing people in the social sphere on the basis of their political identity and around political issues. Political non-violence seeks to assimilate truth searching through non-violent tools like dialogue, dharnas, satyagraha and so on, for bringing the marginalized to justice and holding the unjust system accountable without the intention to topple the government. Political non-violence is an indispensable element of the contemporary social movement. Although these movements separate themselves from the conventional electoral politics, still, it would be wrong to say that they do not have any conception of the idea of embedded political. But it is also to be noted that this idea can be realized substantively in practice only when the dilemma that arises with the repulsion of Gandhian social movements towards a direct intervention in the present political system based on political parties or electoral politics is dealt with. It needs to be handled in a way which gradually brings the conventional political values closer to the Gandhi's idea of political that can be understood as an embedded political. To conclude, I would say that although the movements try to integrate the social and political on many fronts, these aspects mostly remain within the sphere of being a social movement. The integration breaks as soon as the question of dealing with the present political system arrives by entering directly into this system. It is also true that the movements, like many other Gandhian movements, that Ekta Parishad and many other Gandhian movements have been working constantly to build its own idea of political. If one focuses on this idea of political being framed by Gandhians in isolation, then I think this idea brings a lot of hope for future based on Gandhian values and an emergence of a kind of political non-violence. But when it is seen along with the present reality, then a lot of disconsonates gets reflected. There are two parallel ideas of political that are moving. The first is the conventional idea of political based on party system, voting and elections, and the second is the Gandhian idea of political. These two are, as just mentioned, parallel, and the Gandhian idea of political is still in the making, while the other one is a well-established notion. While on the one hand, Gandhians wish to stay outside the latter, but on the other hand, they strike a dialogue with the same. The conundrum that gets created due to such an approach is not that simple to identify, but it does present the possibility that there may be a trade-off of one for the other in the longer run. What I mean by this is that there are greater chances of one getting engulfed by the other. The dominant idea that the present political system is adhering to may suppress the Gandhian idea of political if Gandhians remain in the trap of this dilemma. Although the picture may not be so full of despair, if Gandhians understand how the integrative values of Gandhian politics that is embedded in moral or spiritual beliefs could be spread to the larger masses. This task needs to be carried in a way that the conviction in the Gandhian politics would be transferred from the Gandhian leaders to the larger population. Indeed, it is a very challenging task. The first test that the Gandhians may have to pass is how they spread their political ideas, which may in the future manifest as political non-violence and embedded political in the present political system. They need to enter the system to move forward in the direction of establishing the Gandhian idea of political. It is not about pitching the one against the other. It is about reckoning with the need of the hour. Failures of the present political system, failures of the present idea of political are not hidden from anybody. If not replaced by the Gandhian idea of political, it may happen that the persistence of violence that has encompassed everyone in its vicious circle would never break and the marginalized would always remain at the receiving end. In order to transcend such a grim reality, it is indispensable that social movements try to resolve this dilemma. Probably a new kind of dialogue is necessary to resolve it. It need not be abstract only, but on the concrete issues involving scholars and activists dealing with such matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. I don't think we have one.
I get more time in this Good morning, everyone. I think it's very interesting, the session, at least the way it has been planned. The question of Swaraj, the question of Satyagraha, the centrality of Satyagraha to Gandhi's conception of Lokniti or people's politics. The question of ethics and moral values, which has been, Dr. Priya has just, I have not been theorizing on these issues. My interest or my experience lies in engaging with people's movements, and from a young age I have been doing so. So what I find is that in the whole gamut of movements across the country, from the earliest ones that at least I engaged with, the beginnings of the environmental movement, or be it the Chipko movement, or be it the movement against liquor in Uttarakhand, or wherever, the idea of Gandhi's philosophy in one form or the other percolates into all of them. To say that today we have movements in this country that only reject Gandhi, okay, or not just reject Gandhi and also reject Gandhian methods, would be completely wrong. Be it the most violent movements, or be it those who espouse non-violence, both the movements, I'm just things that come to mind. Central to the Chipko movement was Satyagraha. The Satyagraha would mean sitting around trees which have been marked by contractors for cutting. It would be people sitting at outside the Nainital High Court, going on long periods of hunger strike. Satyagraha was a part that we stand for truth. And is truth showing truth to power, which is exactly what Gandhi was doing. Showing truth to power became a central theme of the entire Chipko movement. Right till the end, when the movement finally was taking up issues, Sundarlal Bahuguna was taking up issues of the Tehri Dam. He just sat next to the dam waters and said, let the dam waters rise. And I will drown in this. This idea of selflessness, of the ability to do personal harm for the sake of a moral, ethical commitment is central, has been central not just to, let's say, Chipko movement or the movement for the movement for coming up of the state of Uttarakhand, for example, took up the same issues. It was 2nd of October, many years ago, when people from all over, from Kumaon and Garhwal, decided to descend to Rajghat. But something which is very essential to understanding is that the Indian state, which also avows itself by Gandhian values, or at least commits, has been extremely violent against these movements. The movements that has been espousing this, there's been an extreme degree of violence, and these movements, for example, let's say the movement for the separate state of Uttarakhand, at Rampur Chowraha along the way to Delhi, many buses were stopped. We estimate, and it's only an estimate, and this estimate has been made by the Allahabad High Court, the estimate was around 50 women raped. And this was done by hooligans along with the Provisional Armed Constabulary, that's the PAC of the UP government. This kind of violence is something which all Gandhian movements, those who espouse non-violence, make it explicitly clear that they will be not using any violent means, have been subjected to. So many of these movements finally get embroiled not in the ethical processes that they started off with, but the processes of trying to get their members and others out of jail. Okay, so for one reason at least, the Indian state has understood this one thing, that getting people embroiled in legal processes is probably the best and the most efficient way of killing things. So I'm shifting completely. I mean, my association has been as a democratic rights activist or a civil liberties activist, visiting various places. So ethical issues, as Riyaman said, see, moral and ethical also are historically determined. There is no one moral and one ethical view. So this was a debate that I'm talking about in central Bihar. Landlordism, in a sense, early 80s, even though landlordism was declining, the attempt by landlords to try and hold on to power, was at its extreme. The ethical question being discussed again and again and again: should you burn the landlord's fields? Iqbal, long ago, the poet Iqbal, long ago would have said, जिस खेत से इंसान को मयस्सर नहीं रोटी, उस खेत के हर गोशाए गंदगी को जला दो. And this was the argument. Is it ethical to do so or not ethical to do so? Is it ethical to burn grain? It's food. But if a food that cannot feed people, then is it food? And I went through this large numbers of people, people who are designated as Naxalite, debating ethical issues of whether food should be burned or not burned. Looting grain is fine, but burning it. So the idea of ethics as part of politics is part of, I think, political practice everywhere. The question of what is ethical and what is not ethical. And therefore, I would continuously say that ethical is something that needs to be seen in a context. And those contexts, the third last point that I wish to talk about, wish to just highlight. Ekta Parishad is one of the organizations being talked about. Politics has become much more democratic than in Gandhi's time. And many of the organizations that we talk about as democratic are organizations which are trying their level best to be not just democratic, not just fight for a democratic polity and society, but also being democratic from within. Gandhi's organization was never so. Gandhi was too central a leader, too large a persona, to talk about a demo. So Gandhi could, for in that sense, talk about going back, studying, realizing from one's experiences, but that those experiences and everything embodied themselves in one person, Mahatma Gandhi. And it is Mahatma Gandhi's views, and which would then spread to others. The attempt with many movements today is not of creating another Mahatma, but of trying to make large numbers of little Mahatmas. In that sense, I think the present social reality presents a number of challenges, both on the concept of satyagraha. So, for example, today you can't do a satyagraha in Delhi. Section 144 will see to it you can't. Just 4 weeks ago, some students who went protesting against a rape case landed up in a police station and we were requesting the police not to file cases against them. So satyagraha is becoming exceedingly difficult. Satyagraha, at least in the form in which we visualize it as a dharna, as a sit-in, as a way by which you do a hunger strike, any of these various forms which are not meant to hurt anybody else but yourself. All these forms themselves are becoming more difficult to work with. So the challenges for Gandhian ethics Gandhian politics. The challenges before them are what the whole the whole palette of different kinds of political opinions, all affected in one form or the other by the kind of Gandhian thought, is all before us. So I just a greater look at each of these movements, not just Ekta Parishad, which avowedly calls itself Gandhian, but a large number of other movements together, you would see some relevant, some very central aspects of Gandhian thought following, becoming the spine of their argument. Thank you.
I suggest you come and use the mic.
Do I? I think I'm loud enough. I'm used
So
to
it's for them to sound
Thank
like
you so
this.
much.
Yeah.
I know. People won't put something. Not my myself.
Why don't you come here? There's a chair that is vacant and you can use it.
Thank you, Professor Ramaswamy, for the invitation. More importantly, joining us, although I'm not. I'm Rajwindi Chitani. I teach political science at the MS University of Baroda, Gujarat. I have two questions. One for, actually not a question, more of a comment for Dhananjay. I was wondering, when we look at this space which you're identifying between what you call Rajniti and Lokniti, and you're right, one, we have focused too much on the idea of Swaraj and really not the making of Swaraj. And I'm trying to look at, as the theme of the seminar goes, the contemporary positioning of Gandhi not as a person but as a phenomenon. What do you do with Gandhi today? Would you not then say that rather than saying the making of Swaraj, and also in continuation to what Harish Kavan said, that there are, you don't need one Mahatma, we need several Mahatmas. I wouldn't want to call Mahatma, put that in quotes, because I think India has had sufficient of a take with the Mahatma. Wouldn't you want to call this the makings of Swaraj? Isn't that more appropriate? That we recognize the plurality which the society is characterized by. Because if we work this out in the singular way, would you really, I'm not sure we would be able to reach a Lokniti, but will we really get Swaraj? Is this really Swaraj? So would you want to also, Lokniti and Rajniti seem to be a more scientific, singular driven ethos. While that making of Swaraj, would you not want to call it the makings of Swaraj? Which, as I said, is also continuation to what Dhawanji said. I have a question for Priya Sharma, if she can hear. This is with online remote.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Priya. I'm meeting you again in a short time. You mentioned you mentioned political non-violence. I was really wondering, is there a non-political non-violence? So what do you mean by political non-violence? Because then we have to pitch this from an Aristotelian logic against a non-political non-violence. That is just a clarification which I have. Thank you very much.
Any more questions? Then we will allow the paper viewers to yes, please. Why don't you come here? Someone else? Please come. No, please come. There's a vacant chair. So you can have this.
I came late. Not lost.
Philosophers, but
Love to hear Dhananjay. But yeah, I'm sort of picking up from Professor Harish Dhawan because, as I said,
On them.
yes, I think, this thing about the Mahatma and the movement being led by Gandhi, I think it's a bit unfair to Gandhi because the whole point was to train satyagrahis and to let satyagrahis take their independent decision about joining or not joining the movement. So there was no force. Definitely solidarity was not the principle. on which people were asked to join. Whether they agreed with the issue or not, whether they had other issues which they wanted to join in, that was not permitted. So I just wanted to raise an objection to that. And I think perhaps where the conscience matters, the training for Satyagrahi and independent thinking is far greater than when we adopt principles of solidarity, which is more common today. So that perhaps Professor Raman care to listen. The second, as I said, this is with the rider that I'm very sorry that I didn't reach in time. But at least from my knowledge of how movements have been in the past few years, the emphasis on truth is lacking. There is non-violence. There is no revisiting a position that one has taken, which I think Gandhi did all the time through the movement. It was not just about how non-violent one was, but about the truth, and where Gandhi insists that part of constituting in the making, Swaraj in the making or Satyagraha in the making, involves leaving space open for negotiation. So it's not कि भाई फार्म लॉस बात ही नहीं करेंगे, आप जो कुछ भी कर ले, हम नॉन वायलेंट बैठ जाएंगे, लेकिन कुछ बात करने का मौका ही नहीं देंगे, तो फिर ट्रुथ की बात कहाँ आए? तो आए.
Can you just be
Yeah.
very specific?
So,
it's not a lecture. It's a questions, please.
yeah, and
Or you're correct.
yeah, this is the second point. The first, and then the third, I feel that Gandhi has, Dhananjay, I have not read his book, but he puts constructive program in the time. So I think Gandhi's attempt during each, constituting each movement was also to bring about institutional change. So I think movements come and die, but if that institutional change does not take place, then there is a problem. I'm sorry for taking time.
Any other question? Anybody else? No? I want to respond on here. Then we give opportunity to Priya.
Sorry.
Okay. Priya, would you like to respond to the comments and the questions that has come your way?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. First, so I'll try to. Yes. First of all, I'm missing a lot of people there, so I'm really sorry I couldn't be there offline. I really wanted to be there. Now, the first question was by Lalvanti ma'am that if I'm pitching political non-violence against non-political non-violence. So, actually ma'am, I was trying to, just for the sake of explanation, I used this term political non-violence in the vocabulary of ETA Parishad itself. So how they present, when you ask them that, why don't you consider yourself to be a political movement? So they had, it was their response that they had proposed that we move, our issues are basically political, our goals are political, and we are using non-violence for that matter, and that's why I just to set those lines in a sentence in a proper manner, to present it in a proper manner, I use political, the term political non-violence. It is not for basically a concept, but it is just a term that I use to just make it clear that maybe for them, being political is to move around political issues and have political goals. So I hope I've answered that. The second is about the comment by Anuradha ma'am. Thank you ma'am for the comment. That is actually very true that these movements need to have an emphasis on truth and truth searching. I think Ekta Parishad does realize it. Second point I wanted to focus upon is leaving space for negotiation, and which this movement actually does. Because of the paucity of time, I couldn't explain that how the movement is standing on three pillars. It is Sangharsh, Samvad, and Rachna. Sangharsh relates to struggle, Samvad relates to dialogue and negotiation. The process of negotiation is very good in Ekta Parishad, and Rachna is constructive work. So I think this movement actually focuses upon the aspect of negotiation. Bringing about institutional changes, yes, there are very, a Gandhi movement actor also needs to pinpoint those structural issues which Dhananjay sir also had pointed that new social movements would be, follow movements if they are not focusing on structural issues, and bringing about some institutional changes that would really, demolish those structural issues. So, yeah, I agree with you that they need to focus on institutional changes as well. So, this is my response.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor Chetani and Professor Veeravali, for your very interesting comments and observations. I would like to see your comments on my comments later on. One is, the puzzle and the distanciation between Gandhian Swaraj and the idea of Logniti later on developed by Vinoba and others. I see clear disjuncture. I don't see continuity. This is my response for the And what I see the transformation from political to spiritual, and the spiritual becomes a very important part for the arrival and theorization of post-materialization of society. The demand is not materialization but post-materialization, and that becomes the self, and the self converts into identity. And this I can see this pattern and this juncture between Gandhi and the Vinoba in both. And despite loss of important claim and insight of Lokaniti, to problematize Rajniti, it is not coming to the process of making of Swaraj. Now, making of Swaraj, yes, it can be makings of Swaraj, but I use in a different context, in a sense that when I'm reading Gandhi, I see a making of Swaraj, and most of the books are focusing on the Swaraj, bypassing the making of Swaraj. And what is this making of Swaraj in the context of Gandhi is as follows, that where subjectivity, Satyagraha and Swaraj are very, very intertwined. And Gandhi uses lots of subjectivity when he uses autobiography, and here he tries to explain narration of human condition, which is subjectivity, where there is a formation of moral aphorism or narration. And then he also possibly tries to explain to Satyagraha transcendence. Transcendence is used, what is happening, that Satyagraha in peace and conflict studies has been reduced to conflict resolution as kind of solving mechanism. You solve, question paper type, 1 + 1 2. But it is transcendence, and transcended at two levels, that my moral aphorism and also at societal level. So, and then you have a political community, Gandhi's political community in form of Swaraj. So I try to suggest that there can be many makings of Swaraj, of course I agree. But these are, if they are not explaining, and what is happening, that directly focusing on Swaraj is giving a very easy remedy in form of decolonization. And when you have a decolonization thesis, using Swaraj, not making of Swaraj, then we are happy with the East and West binaries, and here the claim of original indigenism in form of we are superior by passing the complex structure and argument of Gandhi's. That is, for example, just one example, Professor Radha mentioned about constructive program. Gandhi's 1909 writing him Swaraj attend, and 1948 last edition or 45 edition of constructive program, there is a difference. Here is the anti-empire text, and here Gandhi 18 agenda in constructive program is asking us us to introspect our inertia. So this 18 agenda in 1948 was not given importance, but this easy binary of colonial and decolonial became a very, very catchy phrase in contemporary economy. Thank you so much.
Dhananjay, Priya, Rajesh, and the two individuals. Thank you so much. Everyone is busy with and I didn't get to Thank you so much. I'll be brief like my co-panelists. There are many issues that came up in the paper, in the papers that were presented. Just certain things I just want to observe. First, ideas have a context in time and place. We must be very careful when we are observing ideas. And everybody is a child of this or good times. That is another thing that we need to keep in mind. Not deifying. Gandhi was a phenomenon, no doubt about that. But then we have to understand the Gandhi in the colonial context and his achievements, which were very stupendous, no doubt about it. We combine the political and the social. And here I would just add, which I always tell all my students, that when we use words in analysis, we should be careful how to use these words, what do they really mean, and then apply. Political has a very different connotation from the non-political, and we cannot kind of play around with words. Another word of caution that I will use when we analyze Gandhi is Gandhi is primarily a political activist, not a theoretician in the academic sense. It's very clear that whatever he was doing, it was emerging in course of his various movements. And in fact, he says very clearly, my life is my message. Judge me for what I have done, and certainly not for what his writings. You see, in fact, he says, bury my writings. So there is this political activist, and we must remember, if you go by what McIntyre says, political theory in the way we understand ends with Hegel. Post-Hegel, these are just reformulations. So the whole of the Indian political thinking, if we want to use that term, is post-Hegel. So in which case most of the issues are by and large settled within that permutation and combination. And certainly Gandhi is not a political thinker in the classic sense. If you read, go by John Baldwin's brilliant analysis of Gandhi, there were shades of liberal ideas in Gandhi, there was an anarchist streak in Gandhi. He called himself a philosophical anarchist. And much of what we have to understand of Gandhi is he constantly evolves in course of his various movements. The third thing I want to emphasize is that Gandhi is primarily looking at how to tackle the colonial situation, which was so inhuman, and realizes that the British rule, the fact that it is a colonial power, and to take on authority is not easy. And every state will be repressive. No state will like a challenge. The question is, how do you cope? And here Gandhi's uniqueness lies in kind of bringing together Satyagraha. And he acknowledges that much of it is from Europe, and the suffragettes, the women suffragettes, who played such a crucial role in emphasizing suffering, sacrifice, patience, and also at the same time having a sense of law-abidingness with the idea of changing the law. So this is the crux of Satyagraha that Gandhi invoked. And it's not passive resistance, as he says. And Satyagraha, when he talked about, is of course one is the political, when he kind of launches many of the movements against the British. But more than that, the emphasis on the constructive program, which was equally important because we realized that there's a need to change many things within the country. So, like Oakley's focuses on social, Tilak focuses on the political, Gandhi combines both. And the constructive program is something that Gandhi emphasizes. That if you look at not many writings on Satyagraha, always remember, my life is my message, what I stand for. Preparedness, how do we combat the opponent without hating him? How do we bring about a transformation?
You remain within the framework of the law, but question the legality or even the morality of law. This is the Gandhian spirit of Satyagraha, and extends the limited application that we find in Guru and kind of makes it a mass movement. In fact, Gandhi's idea of Satyagraha is that it has to be principled, it has to be public, non-violent demonstration. The reason I'm saying this is that we should be careful not using the word Satyagraha to apply for anything that seems non-violent or supposed to be Satyagraha. Satyagraha is the ultimate. You don't just launch it. You kind of tell the government, I am opposed to this law, I am going to protest it on this day. And you have to be prepared that if you're going to be imprisoned, you will suffer. Because your commitment is to the spirit of the law. So we must be very careful. Just because someone, Sundar Govardhan, again a great man, I remember he came to the South Campus some 20 years ago, and it was such a great lecture that he gave us. But we should be careful. Just because it appears to be something very Gandhi and it doesn't make it Gandhi. Gandhi's Satyagraha was very clear. Analyze, study it, and then, when you look at the way he took the outer Champaran, the Ahmedabad mill strike, at every stage he studied it, he comes up with an alternative, what to do, prepares his cadre, and tells them that in case you don't get paid, how are you going to earn your bread labor? And Gandhi had a Congress party to back up. Let's not forget, it was Gandhi's Congress, not so centralized. Your apologies for that. It was Gandhi who gave the Congress the constitution, the Forana membership, made it a kind of mass-based, but also some kind of a cadre-based party. Not a cadre-based like the left parties are, but very mass-based. It was the Gandhi's Congress certainly, but it was an umbrella organization which Rajni Kothari later theorized about in terms of how it's a single dominant party with so many shades of opinion. You had people like Rajaji, Rajendra Prasad, you also have Nehru, you also have Subhash, all of them. This is the Gandhi's Congress. And much as he decided many things, but let's not forget that the Gandhi's Congress had branches in every village. It used to be said, two things were very certain in the Indian village in the British time: the postman and the Congress worker. And he built it up, not like a pyramid. It seemed like a pyramid, but it was much more democratic in that sense. The spirit of that is, in a way, lost subsequently. So it's not that kind of centralized or non-democratic. Of course, democracy in course of post-Second World War has become mass democracy. So Gandhi operated in a very different context. And the fact is that Nelson Mandela says this about Gandhi's Satyagraha when the African National Congress tried to debate about the various ways of protesting the apartheid regime in South Africa. He mentions this, that Gandhi's technique were possible in colonial India. The British allowed him to do so. You see, in South Africa, which was far more repressive, it's colonial power. And even here in the Indian context, let's not forget the kind of divisiveness that the British encouraged. But despite all of that, the three pillars of Swaraj that he constantly talked about: Hindu-Muslim unity, abolition of untouchability, doing away with the difference between the city and the village. Conflict is endemic. How do you transform it? How do you solve it? That is what Gandhi's essential approach is. So these are some of my thoughts to the session. And thank you once again for giving me this opportunity, and I thank all my co-panelists and of course the audience for listening patiently. Thank you. Very particular, we start things on time. Punctuality, cleanliness, sanitation, these were Gandhian things. And I remember a long time back a professor who came to the Delhi University, Tripurari knows him very well, so I was my professor. Did my doctoral work, Professor Mukherjee used to always say, I am not going to attend this Gandhian seminar because it starts late. Remember? So, we must be punctual. We do not the Indian stretchable time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was indeed a fabulous session. I really would like to thank our session chair, Professor Ramaswamy, and Harish Dhawan sir, and all the eminent guests who could join us today. Last but not least, I would like to thank our speakers for enriching us with the valuable information. And thank you, Priya ma'am, for joining us. Thank you, audience, for joining us today and making this session ever lovely. I have information to share here. I would like to request you all to kindly join us over tea, which is served outside the seminar room. Thank you so much. Join us tomorrow for another session at the same place, starting at 10 a.m. sharp. So we will be punctual tomorrow, hopefully. Thank you.